Hello, Yates County and beyond, and welcome back to another episode of Invasive Species Friday. Through this short weekly podcast, we at the Yates CCE hope to bring you information about the invasive species you may see around this county. So let's get growing with this week's invasive plant, wild parsnip. Wild parsnip is a perennial herb native to Eurasia. This plant is in the same family as carrots, celery, parsley, and unsurprisingly, parsnip. In fact, it looks and smells a lot like cultivated parsnip and is believed to be an escaped ancestor of 19th century parsnip crops planted by European colonists. They're now widespread in the US and southern Canada. There's only 5 states wild parsnip has not been found in: Hawaii, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. In New York, it can be seen growing around the state, along roadsides and in pastures. Though it looks similar to the giant hogweed we discussed last week, wild parsnip only gets to be about 4 to 5 feet tall. In their first year, the seedlings emerge between February and April and form rosettes. For a couple of years, they grow vegetatively, meaning it focuses on growing leaves, stems, and roots. The leaves are 6 to 12 inches long and compound, with a central stem and 3 to 5 leaflets. Each leaflet is toothed and diamond-shaped. In the plant's second or third year, it grows a flower stalk called a bolt. It's grooved, hairy, and hollow, and it can have sparse branching. Over the winter, the wild parsnip dies back, leaving only a leaf or two. In June to mid-July, the bolt blooms, producing hundreds of small yellow flowers. The flowers are arranged in an umbel, like the Queen Anne's lace mentioned last week. The umbel can be 4 to 6 inches in diameter. Individual flowers consist of 5 petals that are slightly curved inward, 5 stamens, and 1 pistil. The seeds mature in early July and are brown, round, and flat with narrow wings and are 1.5 to 3 inches long. After the hundreds of seeds are produced, the plant dies, though the dead flower stalk remains standing through the winter. The seeds are viable in the soil for up to 4 years, but the seedling mortality is surprisingly high. Only 1% of seedlings survive and reproduce. Wild parsnip is most likely to invade areas of disturbed open habitat. You don't normally see it in well-established fields and meadows, but it's common along the edges and persistent in areas that are continuously disturbed or bare, like roadsides and paths. To prevent the spread of wild parsnip, it's best to remove the infestation when it's small. Mowers are the primary spreader of seeds and should be cleaned before mowing areas without wild parsnip. When possible, it's best to harvest or mow areas lacking the plant first, and to avoid mowing areas when and where the seeds are viable. In other words, it's best to mow after the flowers are produced, but before the seeds are ready. That way, the plant has already depleted much of its resources and will struggle to regrow. If you want to manually remove small patches of this plant, you should cut the root about 1 inch below the ground using a spaded shovel, and grip the stalk just above the ground. Again, it's best to do this before the seeds are viable. If the seeds are already set, you should cut the heads off into a clear plastic bag, close it, and let them rot. Whatever method you decide to use, you need to be very careful around this plant. If you listened to last week's episode, you should remember the term phytophotodermatitis. Unlike the allergic reaction caused by touching poison ivy, the sap of the wild parsnip causes the skin to become very sensitive to ultraviolet light. This means the areas of skin that touch the sap and then are exposed to the sun will experience a severe chemical burn. The affected areas can be sensitive for up to 2 years after contact. The reaction is similar to that produced by the giant hogweed, but it's less severe in the wild parsnip. If you come in contact with wild parsnip sap, which is produced by the leaves, stems, flowers, and fruits, you should cover the area to prevent sun exposure and wash it well with soap and water. If the area is exposed to sunlight and blisters occur, a cool, damp cloth can help relieve the pain, but you should contact your doctor, especially if the reaction is severe. There's no cure, but there are topical or systemic ways to lessen the pain. Be safe on your adventures. Make sure you wear long sleeves, gloves, and long pants in areas where wild parsnip may be present to reduce exposure. And with that, we reach the end of this week's episode of Invasive Species Friday. Next Next Friday, we'll be back with an aquatic plant that's not used in Asian cuisine. Until then, we at the Yates County CCE thank you for tuning in and supporting our fight against invasive species in Yates County.